Crispian is a member of one of Britain's most famous film dynasties, the Mills family. He was born in 1973 to actress Hayley Mills and film director Roy Bolting. Crispian was raised in a seriously thespian atmosphere. His grandfather was Oscar-winning actor Sir John Mills.
My mum would go off and work for long periods of time. But then the perks, obviously, you know, your mum does come back, and then you do get to meet people like Bill Bixby, who played the Hulk, and I met Nicholas Hammond, who played Spider-Man, and I met Harrison Ford in costume, playing it when he did Indiana Jones. Pretty big moments. It was a very normal house in many ways. You know, everybody sort of loved each other in a pretty dysfunctional way. My mum and dad split up, and you know, they couldn't work out their relationship. So I think the problem is that as a kid, you know, when you don't have a good relationship with your parents, and you don't have the full set, you can't really look at them as a kid and say, oh well, they've messed up, haven't they? You know, it has to be the kid's fault. So I think I carried that around with me for a long time.
Crispian was just 2 when his father left home.
My father, I didn't really get back in touch with him until I was about 16, and then it takes a long time. You know, if you've lost a parent, you can't just sort of call up and say, hi Dad, you know, and suddenly you're just your son and he's Dad. You know, it's like a whole complicated relationship to work out, and it took me years to kind of get to a place where I sort of felt comfortable with him.
Crispian's grandparents played an important role in his childhood, as his mother was often forced to be away for long periods whilst filming.
My grandfather was a big influence on me. You know, how can you not be, really? I mean, your grandparents, they fill in a lot more than one might normally think. And when you look back, you realise that they were there and they were constant.
Even though Crispian received emotional support from his grandparents, he sought stability in schooling.
I actually asked to go to boarding school because I wasn't really happy at home. Things weren't working out. So I actually said, you know, do you mind if you send me off to boarding school? It was a kind of a reverse to the way it usually is. And the first school I went to was very good. They encouraged me to get into, you know, music and, you know, all kinds of creative things.
It was at school that Crispian discovered his passion for music.
Literally, I heard You Really Got Me playing very loud in somebody's room, and I was about 12, and I remember walking into the room, and the room was just, the lights were very bright in the room, and I walked in and it was almost like I was entering a holy temple. and this music, I don't know, it was just one of those moments where it grabs you. You know, I became very obnoxious and just antisocial, and I think for about at least 2 years, between maybe 12, 13 to 14, 15, all I did was practice on my own, you know, in a corner, listening to loads of records. Any kind of music with a guitar, a good guitar on it, I would listen and try and learn what I could from it. I was pretty reclusive.
As a result of the privileged lifestyle the Mills family enjoyed, Crispian's mum felt the need to explore a more spiritual path.
My mum had her whole life she had a kind of a guilt, or she wasn't comfortable with the fact that she had been given so much very young. It just didn't sit right with her. She you know, was friends with some Krishna devotees, and they really helped her in many ways, and I think when she understood the basic principles of karma and stuff happening from life to life, and you know, you reap as you sow, and sometimes things are just waiting to happen to you in this life that, you know, maybe had the seeds were sown, you know, long time ago. There's ideas like that. I think it connected with her and made a lot of sense. And vegetarianism, being compassionate, living a night, just being conscious, you know. When my mum started going all kind of spiritual on me and, you know, cooking only vegetarian food, I was not happy about it at all. And I was really upset about it, and I didn't want my mum to change. I certainly didn't want my cooking to have to change. And then I remember thinking how stuck in my ways I was, and I met this very, very beautiful girl, and she was a baby, 12, and I was 11, and she looked me in the eyes and said, God, you know, I don't know how people can eat meat. And I said, I know, how can they do it? And that was it. And I kind of, you know, guys are simple. It doesn't take much to change their mind. I got very attracted by India as a kind of a spiritual mother country. I was getting into those old books, you know, like the Mahabharata and these old legends, and you know, the Bhagavat Purana. You have to be careful how you say that. It's you know, it's the old philosophy books and stories and legends.
Crispian formed various bands during this time, including one with his cousin Saul, who shared Crispian's fascination in Eastern culture and philosophy. He eventually formed psychedelic four-piece The K's with friends Alonzo, Paul and Jay. The band did relatively well, but their fate was altered by a chance meeting with an Indian monk named Kulashekar.
I met a Krishna devotee who had lived with John Lennon. He lived at George Harrison's. He was a student of Bhaktivedanta Swami, who was very respected Sanskrit scholar and yogi, you know, like a holy man. And, you know, George Harrison's a spiritual mentor. And, you know, I was fascinated to talk to him, especially because he had all these stories about, you know, hanging out with the Beatles. I remember thinking that we needed a new name for a band, because we had sent so many demos out over the 3 years we'd been together as the K's. We felt like we'd lost a bit of currency. We needed to pretend we were a new band that no one had ever heard of before. And I was looking for a name, and when I met Kulashekar, I thought, wow, that's a fantastic name. We changed the spelling and took it from there. And everything changed overnight, absolutely, literally overnight.
Celebrating their first top 10 single, and this week's highest new entry is Kulashekar.
Our first time on Top of the Pops, and we were performing Tattva, the song composed from in Sanskrit, based on an ancient Sanskrit aphorism, and we were very pleased with ourselves, you know, that we had pulled it off.
Kulashekar had released a couple of singles before exploding into the charts with Tattva.
Like the flower and the sands of summer, like the sun and the shine. Well, the truth may come in strange disguises. Send a message to your mind.
The Spice Girls were there, singing about two become one, great moment in pop history. And then there was us, you know, singing about the inconceivable simultaneous difference and non-difference of reality. I was like, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Have some of that, kids. It was a good moment. It was very fulfilling.
Well, the truth may come in strange disguises. Send the message through your TV screen.
Coming up, Kulashekar braved the media reaction and released the single that would define their spiritual journey.